a long time, I thought I just wasn't trying hard enough, but the truth is, my nervous system just needs a bit more rest than I realized. Hi there, I'm Jade and welcome to Neuro Nurture Yoga. Today we're going to be talking about my journey through understanding my need for rest a little bit more and why I need more rest. So I'm going to start off with some things that I used to believe regarding rest. I always thought that everyone felt as tired as me and that everyone was constantly mentally as exhausted as I was. I always felt the need to push harder and harder to try and keep up with what seemed like everybody else was able to handle around me, and it just didn't make sense why I wasn't able to keep up. And then this really led me to having this thought and these feelings that I wasn't doing enough and that I was really weak, and it was a sign of weakness that I always needed rest and I felt like I couldn't keep up with everybody else. Oh, the gremlin's coming out. Hi, baby. So these are all things that I used to believe, and it really felt true to my experience as a person. I just felt like I couldn't keep up. I felt like I constantly was exhausted, and I couldn't figure out why I just couldn't be in the same realm as what it looked like other people were doing. So, things that I started noticing is that social situations are very draining for me, and being out in large groups of people for a long period of time, and I guess long is a very subjective term, but for what I would consider a long period of time, and that's always changing. But social situations really drained me. And I also noticed a lot of my sensory overload took away a lot of my energy. And I didn't really even know what that was prior to being diagnosed and understanding the differences of my nervous system compared to somebody who isn't experiencing overstimulation as much as me. And something that has rang true, so true my whole entire life is emotional regulation requires a lot of effort for me. I'm a very emotional person. I've always been driven by emotions, and it's something that requires a lot of effort for me to continually stay regulated. And I wouldn't really ever say that I'm ever continuously regulated emotionally. Yeah. It's a work in progress understanding that component of myself and working with myself. All of this is. But anyways, besides the point. And because of that emotional regulation requiring effort, this sensory overload, all of these things, I was masking a lot, and I mask a lot when I'm in the outside world, and it's really exhausting. And I think that that is definitely a fairly large component in why social situations are really draining for myself, among many reasons, of course. But because of that masking and trying to fit in with the folks around me and trying to be socially acceptable, it's very exhausting. And masking is just, it takes a lot out of a person. And then because of all of these things, recovery took longer than expected, takes longer than expected, and requires more effort than expected. So things that didn't help me on this journey is comparing myself to others. And as you probably have heard in this video so far, there's a lot of that going on, right? I think that's a very natural human thing to do, is to compare ourselves to others. Humans are a very group-oriented species, and comparing ourselves to others helps us to understand how we can fit in with the pack, how we can be a part of the group. So I think it's like super natural to compare ourselves, but when we're given these narratives of what normal is, and then we compare ourselves to that and we can't meet those expectations, it's freaking exhausting and it's confusing. And it just leads to a lot more inner turmoil, in my opinion, from my own experience. And for me, ignoring the early signs of exhaustion is not helpful. It just allows myself to go further into that burnout cycle and to continue the burnout cycle on and on and on. So it just does not help me to ignore those early signs of exhaustion. Am I starting to get a little bit more irritated with people? Do I have a short fuse? Am I just not able to speak in the nicest ways? I find that my bluntness really comes out in not nice ways when I'm starting to get exhausted and everything like that. And that's, for myself, a very good indicator. Like, okay, go take a little break, rest, go do what I need to do in order to be able to show up in a way that's nicer and healthier for the people around me. And not only does that feel better for me, it's better for the people in my life. Pushing through that fatigue is so unhelpful and just continues into that burnout cycle. And I pushed myself too far, and then I turn into a person that I don't want to be, because I feel like there's all of these components going on internally that creates this very toxic person and within myself that just creates so much more turmoil in my life. So I know that I can't push myself. Like, I have to rest. And also treating rest like a reward. If I do XXXXX, then I can finally take a break and I can rest. What if we started resting before, and then, instead of treating it like a reward, create something else that's a reward, you know? Like, oh, I'm gonna go get myself a nice coffee. Or I'm gonna go to the farmer's market and peruse around. Or I'm gonna go thrifting. Giving myself away here of all the things I enjoy. And so, yeah, just also playing into the treating rest like a reward, feeling guilty for slowing down, when I do slow down and it's not something that like I planned out, because I think planning out rest is so important. You got to schedule that in. Just like you brush your teeth, gotta schedule it in. So feeling guilty for slowing down just really is so detrimental to creating a compassionate view for yourself and allowing yourself to rest. So obviously, like, don't feel guilty. That's not helpful. That's not gonna do anything. You have to create a new narrative for yourself of like why you're resting, why this is helpful. Rest is a necessity as a human. I am resting so I can continue showing up in this world. Things that I have learned. Different nervous systems have different needs. Everybody's threshold for what they can handle is going to be so different person to person. So going back to what didn't help, comparing ourselves, comparing our own needs to somebody else just isn't going to be helpful. And rest is preventative, not just recovery. So we need to continually take rest to prevent burnout versus using rest just as a recovery method. So rest to prevent instead of to just recover. Of course, you have to also do that, but using it as a preventative measure before you put yourself into burnout and you need to now move through burnout recovery. So burnout exhaustion, it's not something to push through. That's it. It's not something to push through. Go rest, take a nap, do what you need. It's such an important part of your well-being, a well-being as a person. You simply just need to rest, and it's going to make you a better person if you rest. And if you also work on changing your narrative towards rest, because if you're making yourself feel guilty the entire time that you're resting, is it truly rest because you made yourself feel like garbage for trying to take rest? So it's a big thing to change within yourself and to change that narrative around rest. But I think as a culture, as a society, we need to start doing that, because I think it's very evident in people's mental health and how much people are truly struggling in this world with their mental health, because we're not allowing rest to be preventative. We're just allowing it to be just recovery. So let's start treating it like the wellness tool that it is. And because this is going to be a new habit, it's going to be very uncomfortable to shift that mindset from feeling guilty about taking rest into feeling okay with rest and knowing and being compassionate with yourself for this rest. It's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. I'm still pretty uncomfortable with taking rest. I'm way better than what I was like 5 years ago, but it is a work in progress, and I don't think that it's going to be an easy thing to shift just because of how our world views rest and how our world views productivity. It has to be a personal choice to shift that within yourself and to say screw you to everybody else that's saying what they think you should believe around rest, because every nervous system is different. What does yours need? So some things that are starting to help me with changing this and working on taking rest is, like I've been saying, helping to change that narrative within about how I view rest and what it looks like for me. Things that are like actively helping is quieting my mornings down, so in allowing myself to be a little bit more slower paced in the mornings. And obviously this isn't going to work for everybody. I am a morning person, so getting up earlier before I start my work day to have my meditation, to slow things down so I have enough time to slowly get ready and to not rush through the whole thing for myself is very important. However, that might look different. Maybe it is sleeping an extra half an hour and you prepare your morning stuff the night before so you can have that little bit of actually laying and sleeping in your bed a little bit longer. Everyone's different. Find what works for you. Another thing is scheduling actual downtime. So I find that I'm not really doing this specifically anymore, not as intentional, but actually scheduling like, okay, I'm going to take some time here and I'm just going to relax, especially if you have a very busy schedule, if you have a family, if you have a lot of working parts. Scheduling in that downtime to simply just rest and do what you need to do is going to be super helpful. I don't have the craziest schedule. Like, I'm a pretty busy person, but I have enough downtime that is not constantly pulling me in different places that it can naturally just be woven into just my day to day. And this yoga. Yoga has been the biggest part of my mental health journey for the better part of 10 years, and not really knowing in the beginning what yoga was going to do for me. I grew up with a background of doing lots of different sports, but specifically like dance and like fluid movement was something that really was helpful for me. So the transition to yoga was quite a natural thing for myself. So gentle movement without a lot of structure for myself, and taking it at a nice slow pace. So I don't really do vinyasa yoga anymore, just because it really doesn't help my nervous system how I need it to help. Which kind of flows into the next thing, is reducing stimulation. So that can look so different for each individual person, and that looks very different on each individual day for myself. So sometimes that might be just completely shutting everything out, taking away light, putting a blindfold on, putting my earplugs in, or maybe it's a day where I just need to drown some things out. So for myself, sometimes putting on really loud music, even though that's introducing stimulation, it's taking away from different stimulation that I'm feeling like in my actual body. I'm still trying to understand that component with myself, and understanding it with my therapist, and figuring that all out. So give your feedback below on that. I know that it's like that the ADHD and ASD kind of like working against each other is what I've been told. So yeah, reducing stimulation, introducing different stimulation that might help you to calm down is so important. So stimulation reform in whatever shape that might be for your neurodivergent self. And another big thing is listening to my body sooner, actually honoring what is going on instead of pushing through. That's it. Listen to it sooner. Honor what it has to say. At the beginning, the scheduling is really helpful. And then for myself, it just has more so naturally started to be a part of my actual routine. I notice my signals a lot better than ever before, so I allow myself to, okay, yeah, maybe I was gonna go work on my YouTube videos today, but I simply just don't have the capacity, so I allow myself to rest versus pushing through. And just to end today, a couple things that I want to pass along is needing more rest does not make you a lazy person. It just makes you a person that might need more rest. That's it. It's fine. And your needs are valid. They are totally okay, and they are super valid for you to have those needs. Your worth is not based on the productivity that you are creating. It's not. And recovery is a part of caring for yourself. It is a part of self-care. So whatever that might look like for you, I just hope that this video was in some way helpful for you to shift that, to maybe start thinking about rest in a little bit of a different way. And knowing that sometimes the most supportive thing that we can do is stop fighting our needs and starting to honor them. Thank you so much for joining with me on today's video. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!